Square Ball Podcast.
All right then, Phil. Let's get you doing what you do best, which is making bad predictions about Leeds United before you head off then and do your fancy silly newsletter, whatever it is that you're going to have to do.
The good thing with these ones is I can make them with impunity and then disappear, can't I?
Still on Twitter.
Just deactivate that account straight away. So we sit here in the summer, middle of June. Transfer window that has opened today, so we don't know what's going to happen. And I now see why you've moved over to this new gig just before the transfer window is open.
Perfect timing.
Yes,
Beautiful.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Didn't even have to go for an operation this time to get out of it.
Yeah. Go on, drill into my head again.
Please.
Any news, Phil? Right. Where are Leeds United heading? You can, if you want to make season predictions, by all means do. Long-term predictions.
Yeah.
Where does this go? What are Leeds going to do this coming season? Then let's start with that.
I think they'll get promoted this season. I do.
Automatically?
Yeah. I wouldn't discount the title either. I just think, I'm not saying it'll be a stroll and it'll be, a procession to it, but even though players are going to have to go and players will go, and really interested to see who that is in the end, I think they'll be strong enough. I don't get the feeling that the division is shaping up quite as it did this season. I think there'll be plenty of clubs who are potentially as strong as, say, West Brom and Norwich and Coventry and others were last season, in that bracket. But I just can't see there being a clutch of four who go close to or over 90 points in the way that Leicester, Ipswich, Leeds and Southampton did. So I do think they will go up. I do feel like they have to go up this season, not because it'll be Armageddon if they don't, but as we've spoken about before, it just becomes progressively harder once your parachute payments diminish and once... I mean, who knows where PSR is going to go in the long run, but for as long as it exists in the Championship in the way that it does tie your hands. And you do need plenty of money coming in order to let you rebuild and to sign players and to maintain a high wage bill. And obviously, the longer you're down here, the more you lose players of Premier League stock that you've either been relegated with or have acquired on the back of that. So it's important, but I do think they'll go up next year, especially because I've fucked off. So they'll be like, it's like the jinx is gone, promoted.
I see, and I don't know, do you get sucked into these narratives of what happened with the promotion under Bielsa? First season, finished third, and then balls it up in the playoffs. Next season, champions.
It's daft little things you do with yourself in your mind as well, where you're going, well, Liverpool win the top division in the same year we win the second division, and there at one point a lot of that might happen. It's like, well, that's going to line up again, so perfect.
Yeah.
It's more or less a done deal. Then they drop off and we drop off, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, fine.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that, does it?
But no, I know what you mean, and it feels like it's weird. There's not the same. I guess there's not the same desperation about it.
No,
as there was under Bielsa. I think everyone that second season under Bielsa, everyone felt like it needed to work, and I think by the time the second season kicked in as well, you wanted it to work for Bielsa in a way that I don't feel we do necessarily for Farke. I like him
because he's done it before,
and I don't feel like I want it to change manager or anything. But equally, I wouldn't have felt devastated if he'd left at the end of this season. Whereas that first season under Bielsa, if he'd have said, "Look, we tried, didn't work. This is me gone," I feel like the whole club would have completely flopped. It would have just been like the air being taken out of it.
Yeah,
it definitely would have done. But also at that stage, you were looking at Bielsa and saying, in the best part of a generation, Leeds have never had anything like it. Whereas I think at the moment you've seen Bielsa get them promoted, so that kind of answered the question of whether it could be done, which it could. And you've also seen that other coaches can actually put together credible and competent seasons in the Championship in the way that Farke did last year, which makes you realise that it's not only Bielsa who can get them out of this league. There are other managers who are good enough to do that, and Farke potentially is. But I'll say it again, I just see no way in which Farke gets a third chance at this. I think it'll have to be this season.
Yeah. I hope. I sort of quietly hope it will be. And I think they're
in really good nick to do it.
Yeah, I think maybe that's what softened the blow of losing at Wembley as well. Just kind of let that one go and thought, do you know what? We'll have another really good run at it this next season. I'd rather not be in the Championship. But then again, didn't really enjoy the Premier League all that much in the second couple of years. But from a financial point of view, if you want to see your club being vaguely half decent, that's where you've got to be. It's the lesser of the two evils, isn't it? So, but I don't know. Yeah, I think the idea of winning games appeals to me. The idea of hopefully being up there, very appealing to me. And I'd love to see us lift a trophy because we missed out last time, as we said.
I've got a feeling you might enjoy the Premier League a bit more this time round. I don't mean I think it'd be a push to see some football as good as Bielsa's in that first season and some results as good as that. But I think the long-term planning will be better, and I think it'll probably be more logical and more rational as well. I suspect it's probably not that difficult to have a transfer strategy that works better than it did when they went up last time. And I think if they do get on to redeveloping the ground, and it does feel, constantly like they need to get promoted in order to press the button on that. But if they do, and there are, big commercial effects from that affect things in a positive way too, then I do think you'll see them start to creep up the league. And I do think you'll start to see them look like an established Premier League club rather than a club as it came to be seen in the last 2 seasons, who are just kind of on the fringes, on the edge, and in danger of going down.
In your almost 20 years of covering Leeds, there's basically been a Ellen Road is going to get redeveloped story every year, hasn't there?
Yes.
For one reason or another.
I think all that's happened is the Fabian Delph cladding, and the occasional things like a new roof and stuff.
Yeah, although they are doing a bit of internal work.
Oh, a new press box. There's a new press box. Yeah.
Oh, that must be nice.
You insisted upon that, didn't you?
Yeah.
So now we're with the Athletic.
Yeah.
Can
you rebuild this, please?
Yeah. But there's stuff going on in the stadium at the minute, isn't there? They're upgrading certain areas, just like the basic behind the scenes stuff, which is actually goes to show the sort of desperate need for it, given that there are plans, all things being equal, if we do go up, that they, demolish a lot of what they're actually doing now and put new stands in. But,
over the years, that's been part of the problem. That you need someday you need the big project of everything at Ellen Road getting completely rebuilt. But in the meantime, they haven't really done the incremental small upgrades that just make it steadily better. I mean, I remember when Cellino was here, somebody asking if they could have new signs at Thorpe Arch because some of them were dropping to bits or a bit faded or whatever else. I don't know how much that would have cost, but for a football club, you'd not have been talking much. And Leeds did not have a lot of money to burn back then, but even so. And they were told, no, you can't do that. Swimming pool was shut off, tiles dropped off the wall, all that type of the stuff that you would have expected to have been maintained, in a lot of cases, hasn't been or wasn't in certain periods. So the Thorpe Arch has had money spent on it, money spent because Bielsa wanted that to happen. And in the Radrizzani era, there was cash put forward for that to take place. But I mean, you walk into Ellen Road and it doesn't feel like it's been touched.
No.
Here's a prediction for you to make then. In what year does someone sit in a new West Stand for the first time?
On the basis that the rules kind of insist that you've got to do it in a season, I think 2026 or 2027, one of those 2 years.
So is this based on go up this year?
Go for gold.
Yeah. Spades in the ground the year after. Yeah.
Because the thing is, if they're going to do it, there's not a lot of point in holding off if they don't have to. The sooner that it's finished, the sooner you start to benefit from your commercial opportunities and avenues that you can go down. And for as long as it sits as it is at the moment, the limitations are massive financially.
Yeah. I mean, just going back to the sort of stuff that went before, and, you were talking about the various owners and stuff you've covered, there was basically, to all intents and purposes, throughout your time covering Leeds, managed decline up to when Radrizzani arrived.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then, one owner trying to pick it up off the back of the previous one. And
bear in mind as well that up until 2017, Leeds didn't even own the ground. It was never, for the first 10, 11 seasons that I covered them, it was somebody else's property. And likewise Thorpe Arch, which still is, as far as I'm aware. I haven't looked at that for ages, but that was always the setup. And then Radrizzani bought it back, and it went into Greenfield, but was really part of the club at that point. And now it's in the 49ers' hands, and I don't think there's any great problem with that at all. It just feels part of the package that if the club was to move on, to Red Bull, somebody would get the ground with it. If you're buying the club, you want the ground. Don't you? And that's how the setup is now. But you're right, and even if it wasn't managed decline, i.e. deliberate, it was very much allowed to decline, if that makes sense, and just to deteriorate. I mean, there is... I actually think Ellen Road really suits the sort of club that Leeds are, and I think that a lot of benefits from an aesthetic point of view of having the ground as it is. But there's, even down in the Championship, there's hardly a stadium like it anymore, is there?
An absolute bastard of a club, isn't it? But in the best way. In the best way.
But you need that, and I think it totally ties in with what Leeds are and what Leeds try to be.
Yeah.
I always say I can never quite explain to people what it is about Leeds, but if you go to Ellen Road, you could never be anywhere else. There are like loads of stadiums where you turn up, and if you just painted it a different colour, you would say, well, this is, X as opposed to Y, and it all feels the same. But Leeds are properly in their own little ecosystem and very, I was going to say very happy in it. I don't know about that. But
well, as we've said though, nobody in football's happy. Nobody is. It's that they're being upset at something is the default position.
And the way football's going, I don't see it moving to a position anytime soon where people find it any easier to be happy.
Well, so let's extend Michael's prediction request a little bit further then. So you're saying 2026.
Yeah, why not?
For stadium. So does that mean that, let's say in 5 years' time, Leeds United are in the Premier League, in an expanded ground and consolidated in the Premier League?
Well, I don't think if they go up and expand the ground, and obviously they have a waiting list and everything else, and there is vast interest. But I think when you get stuck in the Championship for any length of time, that does start to dwindle. We've seen it before, and you can't forget that the waiting list was built up as a result of the football that you were getting under Bielsa. Suddenly everybody wanted a piece of that, and it became the fear of missing out, didn't it? And you start to think to yourself, if I want to go, I could do with a ticket, and actually I'd rather just have a season ticket so that I can go all the time. But yeah, if they go up and they redevelop the ground, the strategy will absolutely be, and I know the strategy would be to establish themselves anyway, but I think there's more pressure again to do it. And I think the 49ers would make it happen. They seem to have good amounts of financial backing behind them. They seem to have avenues to investors when they need investors. Obviously, even in the Premier League, you can't just spend what you want. So it's not a it's not a kind of silver bullet just having loads of cash. But I do think they'll have a better strategy for how to establish themselves and how to be steady. Obviously, clubs with good strategies sometimes get smoked anyway, and that could happen. But I think if you were putting money on, are they going to establish themselves under Radrizzani versus are they going to establish themselves under the 49ers? I'm pretty sure most people would go for the latter.
Yeah, it's the scale of ambition that I hope is the thing that steers us in the right direction.
Yeah.
And I know Radrizzani always had the Leicester City plan and the Wolves plan and all the various other plans, but it always felt a little bit nebulous, didn't it? It never felt like it had the sort of concrete foundations to it, whereas you look at what's there now, let's say the scale of the money that's involved, the scale of the money that's needed, and for anybody who's, we've all got our fears about Red Bull, one thing it might do is add a huge amount of structure and support across the continent.
It will put money in, and there is a lot of expertise at Red Bull. Whatever you think about them, they do know good players when they see them, and they have a lot of success stories with recruitment. And I think that's what it all comes down to. Money is obviously at the root of everything with football, but the quality of your recruitment always dictates where you go. And managers are really important. I think Bielsa, by some distance, is the coach that I've seen make the most difference to individual and collective players. It was pretty extraordinary, and I think always will be. But I don't think, minus a good enough squad, most managers can make that much difference to, football does tend to, you need a plan, you need tactics, you need strategy, but it does tend to come down to what sort of quality do you have on the pitch. And that really was where Leeds went badly wrong more than anything in the last two seasons.
But a bright future awaits, in your opinion?
Yeah, I think so. But disappointed if not. I mean, it's never struck me as, if you have the right money and the right idea and the right expertise, it's never struck me as a huge challenge to make a go with Leeds. They seem like a club who are absolutely right for that. And I think in the position the 49ers are in now, they must fancy it next season. They'll know they've got a lot to do this summer, and they will have to make some hard decisions. And I think all eyes, but people seem to me to be fairly pragmatic about the idea that, say, Somerville might go or Nonto might go. I think the one people have eyes on, and the one that's going to be politically challenging, is Archie Gray, if that comes into the equation. But they'll know they've got a good chance if they do this right this summer. They should have a better chance on the basis that the summer will be more orderly. I mean, someone was moaning to me on Twitter that we were wittering on about, the first month of last season being difficult. But the summer wasn't ideal. This one offers, nothing really in the way of excuses on that front. So it's there to be done.
And in 10 years, we'll all be in flying cars and living in the cloud or something.
Yeah. It's sad, somebody who's a bit older than me was saying he kind of feels like football's leaving him behind, and he feels like football as it was for and I'm not telling anybody what they should want from football. And like younger generation will see it different to us and interested in different things. But what we all knew football to be when we were growing up, or when we were a little bit younger, is not how football's going to be further down the line. You are going to get Premier League games in the States. You have got FIFA, who just seem to be trying to coin it in every single conceivable way. And as we said about Red Bull coming in offering money, whether or not people like them, if you can't beat them, join them, isn't it? That's how it is. Otherwise, you do get left behind. And whether or not that model of football is going to be what your legacy fans like, I have my doubts. But stick with it for as long as you can.
I'm just going to stick with it in the hope it all collapses. Because I don't really see an alternative route for me outside of Leeds United.
Your favourite podcast of all time.
Yeah, I don't see an alternative for Leeds United is my downside to this, because I'm aware that I could call this a day now and just go Pontefract Collieries every week. It'd be cheap. It's on my doorstep. I can have a pint. I can do all that. But it wouldn't be the same. And I like the idea. And I like the idea of us being in the Champions League and getting there because we've managed to build a good team, and the joy of it all. It's just that the route there and the constantly changing outside pressures of football in terms of various ownership groups getting involved and the legal cases that now seem to be spiralling. It's just so incredibly tedious, and you don't get the feeling there are any good people in it.
You've got to keep the spirit of proper attachment alive, but Leeds are really good at that. The City's really good at that, and I think both the City and the club have got themselves into a position where it's quite hard to follow anybody else round here. As time went by in Edinburgh, you start to see more and more Celtic and Rangers shirts. And part of the reason for that is that Edinburgh's just not particularly a football city. You've got two decent-sized clubs there. But there are a hell of a lot more people in Edinburgh. I know it's true anyway, but loads more people in Edinburgh who don't go to the football than do. You go over to Glasgow, and that city's able to support two major clubs, plus loads of clubs round about, like Partick and St Mirren and Hamilton and others. Whereas in Leeds, I could not imagine living in Leeds and buying a Man United kit, really. And I know there will be some people who do. But I think it's made harder because you'd expect it to have a certain degree of loyalty around here. And I think that's a good thing.
The Square Ball Podcast.